The morning I walked into Colonel Marcus Webb's office, I had no idea I was about to step into someone else's nightmare. It was supposed to be routine. Standard quarterly inspection, check security protocols, verify classified document handling, note any irregularities. 14 years in the Marines had taught me to approach these audits with professional detachment. Look, document, move on. Don't get involved in personal lives. The sunlight cut through the Venetian blinds in sharp angles, painting stripes across the colonel's mahogany desk. Everything was regulation perfect. Pens aligned, inbox empty, a small American flag standing at attention in its brass holder. The kind of workspace that told you its owner lived by the manual. I was halfway through my checklist when my eyes landed on the photograph. It sat in a silver frame near the corner of the desk, a little girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, with honey brown curls and eyes so startlingly blue they seemed to glow even through the glass. She was smiling at the camera, clutching a stuffed toy to her chest. One of those genuine childhood smiles that makes the world feel like it might actually be good. My pen stopped moving across the page. The room went silent except for the wall clock's steady tick. I knew that face. The inspection folder slipped from my hands, papers scattering across the burgundy carpet like leaves. My throat tightened. I couldn't breathe properly, couldn't think beyond the single thought screaming in my head, that's Rose. Major Keller? The colonel's voice cut through the fog. Is something wrong? I turned slowly, mechanically, the way you move when your body is functioning but your brain has temporarily shut down. He stood in the doorway, mid-50s, silver at the temples, the bearing of someone who'd commanded men in places that didn't make the news. His expression shifted from curious to concerned as he took in my face. Sir, my voice came out rough. This girl, the one in the photograph. I pointed with a hand that trembled despite 14 years of training designed to keep hands steady under any circumstances. He stepped forward, following my gaze to the frame. His jaw tightened. What about her? I swallowed hard, trying to force the words through a throat that had closed around them. She lived with me, at Riverside Children's Home, in Georgia. The color drained from his face. His lips parted, working around words that wouldn't come. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. You mean my missing daughter? The air in the room changed. Became heavy, dense, like the atmosphere before a storm. Sir, that's my daughter, Charlotte. He moved closer to the desk, one hand reaching out to touch the frame with a gentleness that felt almost sacred. She was taken from a playground in Savannah. 19 years ago. She was 5 years old. My knees felt weak. I found the nearest chair and sat without asking permission. I knew her as Rose, I heard myself say. Rose Mitchell. She came to Riverside when I was 7. The staff said she'd been found wandering near a highway rest stop outside Atlanta. No ID, couldn't remember her last name. She stayed for 3 years before I stopped, the memory hitting me like cold water. Before she was transferred. Foster placement, they said. Colonel Webb lowered himself into his chair slowly, like a man who'd suddenly aged a decade. His hand still rested on the photograph. Tell me everything, he said quietly. Please. So I did. I told him about Rose's quiet voice and the way she'd hum old church hymns when the younger kids cried at night. About how she'd draw houses in her notebook, always the same house, 2 stories with a wraparound porch and a tire swing in the yard. About the tiny crescent-shaped birthmark just below her left ear that she'd let me trace with my finger when we were supposed to be sleeping. When I mentioned the birthmark, his hand went to his chest like something had pierced it. Charlotte had the same mark, he whispered. Exactly the same place. We sat in silence. The clock ticked. Somewhere outside, someone was running PT drills, their cadence drifting through the window like a ghost of normalcy. She talked about her father sometimes, I said softly. In her sleep, she'd call out for someone named Papa. The counselors said it was just a dream, that lots of kids made up families when they didn't have real ones. I met his eyes. But she remembered you, sir. Somewhere in there, she remembered. Colonel Webb's hands were shaking. He pressed them flat against the desk to still them. I searched for years, he said, voice cracking. Private investigators, FBI contacts, every military resource I could access. They found nothing. My wife. He stopped, swallowed hard. My wife Diane died 6 years ago. Heart attack, the doctors said. But I think she died of grief. She never stopped looking for Charlotte. Never stopped believing she was alive somewhere. The weight of that loss filled the office like water rising. If Rose is Charlotte, I said carefully, if they're the same person, then someone didn't just take her, sir. Someone kept her, moved her into the system under a different name. That takes planning, resources. Access to files that most people can't touch. His eyes sharpened, the fog of grief burning away under something harder. You're suggesting this wasn't a random abduction. I'm saying a 5-year-old doesn't just reappear 3 hours away with a new name and no one asks questions. Not unless someone with authority made sure no one asked questions. He stood, walked to the window, stared out at the base beyond. Fort Benning looked peaceful in the morning light, ordered, safe, everything the military promised to be. I was a major back then, he said quietly. Working at the Pentagon. I'd just been assigned to audit a defense procurement program. Big contracts, classified technology, billions of dollars moving through channels that didn't quite add up. He turned back to me. 3 days before Charlotte disappeared, I found evidence of fraud. Ghost companies, falsified reports, money being siphoned into accounts that didn't exist on any official ledger. My pulse quickened. Did you report it? I was about to. I'd scheduled a meeting with the Inspector General for Monday morning. His jaw clenched. Charlotte was taken on Saturday afternoon. My wife and I were at the park. She was on the swings. I turned my back for less than a minute to buy ice cream. When I turned back, his voice broke. She was gone. And the fraud investigation? Dropped. Officially, I took family leave. Unofficially, I was told that digging into certain contracts would be career limiting. He laughed bitterly. I told them to go to hell. But then Diane started getting phone calls. Hang-ups at first, then a voice saying we should focus on grieving, not investigating. After the third call, I backed off. I thought if I stopped asking questions, maybe they'd leave us alone. Maybe they'd even return her. But they didn't. No, they just made her disappear so thoroughly that even the people paid to find missing children couldn't find a trace. I stood, moved closer to the desk, picked up the photograph. Charlotte's, Rose's, face smiled up at me. The same girl who'd shared her crackers with me when I was hungry. Who'd held my hand during thunderstorms because I was scared and she was brave enough for both of us. Sir, I said quietly, with your permission, I'd like to help you find her. He looked at me for a long moment. Major Keller, this isn't a standard investigation. If I'm right about why she was taken, we're talking about people with serious power. People who've already proven they're willing to destroy families to protect themselves. Then they made one mistake, sir. What's that? They left her alive, which means there's a trail. And if there's a trail, I can follow it. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite hope. Hope was too dangerous after 19 years. But something close. Purpose, maybe. Or just the relief of not fighting alone anymore. You'd be risking your career, he said. Respectfully, sir, I didn't join the Marines to play it safe. I joined to protect people who can't protect themselves. I set the photograph down carefully. That includes little girls who get erased because their fathers asked the wrong questions. He extended his hand. Not a salute, not a formal gesture. Just one human being to another. Then let's find my daughter, Major. I shook it, and somewhere in that moment, I stopped being just an inspector following protocol. I became something more dangerous, someone who decided that the truth mattered more than the consequences. That evening, I sat alone in my quarters, laptop open, staring at a single search query I hadn't yet hit enter on. Riverside Children's Home, Georgia. Outside my window, the base was settling into its evening routine. Colors ceremony at 1800. Mess hall filling up. Young Marines who didn't yet know that sometimes the enemies you can't see are more dangerous than the ones you can. I thought about Rose, Charlotte, and how the last time I'd seen her, we were both 10 years old. A social worker had come to take her to what they called a good home. She'd hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Don't forget me, Alex, she'd whispered in my ear. Never, I'd promised. And then she was gone, and I'd spent the next 2 decades trying to bury that orphanage deep enough that it couldn't hurt anymore. I'd been adopted 3 years later by a military family, strict but kind, the kind of people who believed structure could heal anything. They'd given me a new last name, a new life, a path that led to the Naval Academy and eventually the Marines. I'd rebuilt myself completely, or so I thought. Now, staring at that search bar, I realized you never really leave the places that shaped you. They just wait, patient as landmines, until you step on them again. I pressed enter. The screen filled with results. Most were dead ends. The home had closed 8 years ago, absorbed into Georgia's consolidated foster system. But one link caught my eye. Riverside Alumni Support Group, Facebook. I clicked it. The group was small, maybe 40 members. People who'd aged out of the system, sharing memories and offering support to each other. I scrolled through posts, looking for familiar names, familiar faces. And then I saw it. A post from 6 months ago, written by someone named Jennifer Chen. Does anyone remember a girl named Rose Mitchell? Dark curls, blue eyes, she was there in the mid-2000s? I'm trying to find her for a reunion project. Last I heard, she was transferred to a foster program in South Carolina in 2010. If anyone has info, please DM me. My heart hammered. South Carolina, 2010. That was 3 years after I'd left the home. 3 years after I'd lost track of her. I clicked on Jennifer's profile. Her page was sparse, but one photo showed a smiling woman in scrubs standing outside a hospital, Memorial Health University in Savannah. The same city where Charlotte had been taken. Coincidence? In my experience, coincidences were usually just conspiracies you hadn't connected yet. I sent her a message. Hi Jennifer. I'm looking for Rose too. We were at Riverside together. Do you have any other information about where she went? It's important. Then I opened a secure document and started typing everything I could remember about Rose. Every detail, every conversation, every small thing that might matter. Because Colonel Webb had been right about one thing. We were up against people with power. But power has a weakness. It leaves tracks, documents, digital fingerprints, people who remember things they weren't supposed to. And I knew how to hunt. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, Major Keller. This is Colonel Webb. Meet me tomorrow, 0600, off base. Mama Lou's Diner on Route 27. Come in civilian clothes. We need to talk about who we can't trust. I stared at that last sentence. Who we can't trust. Which meant he already knew this went deeper than fraud and abduction. Which meant tomorrow morning, I was going to learn just how dark this rabbit hole really went. I powered down my laptop, checked my service weapon out of habit, and tried to sleep. Outside, the base hummed with the sounds of safety and order. But I'd been a Marine long enough to know that safety was an illusion. And orders from powerful people were the most dangerous weapon of all. Mama Lou's Diner sat on a lonely stretch of highway where Georgia bled into Alabama, the kind of place that served bottomless coffee and asked no questions. I arrived at 0545, parked my Jeep between 2 pickup trucks, and scanned the parking lot out of habit. Colonel Webb was already inside, sitting in a corner booth with a clear sightline to both exits. Even in civilian clothes, jeans and a faded army sweatshirt, he carried himself like a commander. Some things you can't take off with the uniform. I slid into the booth across from him. A waitress materialized with coffee before I could say hello. You look like you didn't sleep, he said. I did research instead. Find anything? I pulled out my phone, opened my notes. Rose Mitchell was transferred from Riverside to a foster placement program in Charleston, South Carolina in March 2010. According to records I could access, she was placed with a family named Green, Thomas and Patricia Green. But here's where it gets strange. He leaned forward. The Greens don't exist. I mean, they existed on paper for exactly 14 months, then vanished. No tax records after 2011. No property ownership. No digital footprint. It's like they were props in a play that closed. His expression darkened. Someone created a fake family. A very convincing fake family. Good enough to fool social services. I showed him a scanned document I'd pulled from a public database. This is their foster care certification. Issued by South Carolina Child Protective Services, signed by a supervisor named Barbara Yates. You talked to her? She died in 2015. Car accident. The words hung between us like smoke. That's convenient, he said quietly. Very. But I found something else. I pulled up another document. Before she died, Barbara Yates made a complaint to her union representative. Said she was being pressured to approve placements for families that didn't meet standards. She named 3 cases specifically. One of them was file number SC 47293. Rose? I nodded. Same date, same placement. She wrote that a man from Federal Oversight had personally vouched for the Green family, said it was part of an emergency relocation program for at-risk children. She wanted it on record that she'd objected. Did she name the federal contact? Just initials. DH. I met his eyes. Does that mean anything to you? His jaw tightened so hard I could see the muscle jump. Dennis Hammond, Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Logistics. He was my superior officer back in 2005. The man I was about to report for procurement fraud. The puzzle pieces were starting to form a picture, and I didn't like what I was seeing. Sir, if Hammond used his position to relocate Charlotte after you got too close to his operation, then she wasn't just taken to hurt me. She was taken to keep me quiet. He looked down at his coffee cup. And it worked. I stopped investigating. I stepped back. I did exactly what they wanted. You were protecting your wife. Your family. I failed to protect my daughter. You didn't know where she was. That's not failure. That's what I tell myself at night, he interrupted quietly. But it doesn't change the fact that while I was following orders and keeping my head down, Charlotte was growing up with strangers. With people who were paid to keep her hidden. The waitress refilled our cups. We waited until she was out of earshot. What do you remember about Hammond? I asked. Webb exhaled slowly. Smart. Connected. He came up through Army procurement, made general by 40. Everyone said he had a talent for making difficult contracts work out. But there were always rumors, suppliers who got rich overnight, companies that existed only on paper. Nothing you could prove, just patterns. Patterns like ghost companies? Exactly like that. The investigation I was running traced $400 million in defense contracts to 3 companies that had no physical offices, no employees, no manufacturing capability. Just bank accounts. Hammond's signature was on every approval. That's a lot of money to protect. Enough to make a 5-year-old girl disappear. I pulled out a map I'd printed and spread it on the table. Okay, Charlotte was taken from Savannah in 2005. She surfaced as Rose Mitchell at Riverside Children's Home in 2006, about 200 miles northwest. She stayed there until 2010, then was transferred to Charleston, 300 miles northeast. But the Green family doesn't exist past 2011. Webb studied the map. So where did she go after that? That's what we need to find out. I sent a message last night to someone who knew Rose at Riverside. A woman named Jennifer Chen. She said she was looking for Rose too, for a reunion project. His head snapped up. You sure that's safe? I used a fake name and burner account. But Jennifer works at Memorial Health in Savannah. The same city Charlotte was taken from. That's not a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences anymore. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression changed, not quite fear, but close. I need to take this. He stepped outside. Through the window, I watched him pace, one hand running through his silver hair in a gesture of frustration or worry. I used the moment to pull up my encrypted messages. Jennifer Chen had responded. I think I know why you're really looking for Rose. We should talk, but not online. Can you meet me in Savannah? There's something you need to see. My pulse quickened. I typed back. When and where? The response came immediately. Tonight, 8 p.m. Forsyth Park Fountain. Come alone. Trust me, if you bring anyone official, you'll never get the truth. I screenshot the message just before it disappeared. Webb came back inside, his face gray. That was a friend at the Pentagon. Someone's been asking about me. About old investigations. About my family. Hammond? Or someone working for him. My friend said it came through IG channels, an audit of my service record, specifically my time in procurement oversight. They're checking to see if you're digging again. Which means they're watching. Which means we need to move faster than they do. I showed him Jennifer's message. He read it twice. It could be a trap. Could be. Or it could be the only person willing to tell us the truth. He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the map on the table, at the lines connecting cities where his daughter had been moved like a chess piece. I'm coming with you, he finally said. She said to come alone. I don't care. I've spent 19 years not being there for my daughter. I'm not sitting this one out. I understood that some orders, even sensible ones, were impossible to follow when they meant standing by while someone else walked into danger alone. Then we'll go together, but we stay in the background until we know it's safe. He nodded. Agreed. We spent the rest of the morning planning. Webb had contacts, retired military, people he trusted who owed him favors. He made calls from a burner phone while I dug deeper into Dennis Hammond's current position. What I found wasn't encouraging. Hammond had retired from the DoD in 2018, but he'd landed on his feet. Board positions at 3 major defense contractors, a consulting firm that advised foreign governments on procurement strategy, and a foundation called the Military Family Support Initiative that claimed to help families of fallen soldiers. Noble sounding, perfectly positioned, completely untraceable. Sir, I said, showing Webb the Foundation's website. Look at this. He squinted at the screen. Military Family Support Initiative. What about it? Check the board of directors. He scrolled down. His face went pale. Third name on the list. Barbara Yates Memorial Seat, held by Patricia Green. The same Patricia Green who'd supposedly fostered Rose in South Carolina. The same Patricia Green who'd vanished in 2011. She's not gone, Webb breathed. She's working for him. And if she's working for him, she knows where Charlotte is. We looked at each other across the table. We need to be very careful, he said quietly. If Hammond knows we're getting close, he'll move her again. Or worse. I didn't ask what worse meant. We both knew. Then we don't let him know. We move quietly, no official channels, no records. You're talking about conducting an investigation off book. I'm talking about finding your daughter before the people who took her realize we're looking. He nodded slowly. You understand what you're risking? Your career, your pension, maybe your freedom. If we break protocol and it goes sideways. Sir, with respect, I grew up in a system that teaches you real quick that protocols are written by people who've never had to choose between following rules and doing what's right. I know which one I choose. Something in his expression softened. You remind me of Diane. She had that same fire. Then let's make sure we don't waste it. We split up after lunch. Webb had a meeting at Fort Benning, unavoidable, he said, and missing it would raise suspicions. I drove back to my quarters and spent the afternoon reading everything I could find on missing children, false identities, and federal witness protection protocols. Because that's what this looked like, a protection program but twisted. Instead of protecting a witness, they were protecting a crime. Instead of giving someone a new life, they'd stolen one. At 1700, I changed into civilian clothes, dark jeans, plain jacket, boots that could run if necessary. I strapped my service weapon to my ankle holster, covered by the jeans. Probably paranoid. Probably smart. I texted Webb. Leaving now. If you don't hear from me by 2200, start asking questions. His response was immediate. Be careful. And Alex, thank you. The drive to Savannah took 3 hours. I arrived as twilight was settling over the city, painting the old squares and Spanish moss in shades of purple and gold. Beautiful and haunted, the way only southern cities that have lived through centuries of ghosts can be. Forsyth Park was busy, joggers, families, street musicians claiming their spots. I parked 2 blocks away and walked in, scanning faces, looking for anyone who might be looking for me. Old habits. Good habits. The fountain stood at the center of the park, water cascading in tears, tourists snapping photos. I checked my watch. 1955. At exactly 2000, a woman approached. Mid-30s, Asian features, wearing scrubs like she'd come straight from a shift. She carried a messenger bag and walked with the careful alertness of someone who knew they might be followed. Jennifer Chen. Alex, she said quietly. I nodded. Walk with me. We moved away from the fountain, deeper into the park where the oaks formed a canopy thick enough to hide us from casual surveillance. She didn't speak until we were surrounded by shadows. You're really looking for Rose, she finally said. It wasn't a question. I am. Why now? After all these years? Because I found out who she really is. And I found out someone very powerful doesn't want her found. Jennifer stopped walking. So you know what? That she's alive. That she's still being moved. That the people who took her are still watching her. My pulse hammered. How do you know that? She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. Because I'm one of the social workers assigned to her case. Have been for 3 years. And what they're doing to that girl. Her voice cracked. It's not protection. It's imprisonment. She handed me the folder. Inside were documents, case files, psychiatric evaluations, transfer orders. And at the top, a recent photograph. A young woman, early 20s, with curly brown hair pulled back in a ponytail. Blue eyes that I'd recognize anywhere, even after 2 decades. Rose. Charlotte. Alive. Where is she? I whispered. Jennifer looked around, then leaned close. They move her every 2 years. New city, new identity, new handlers. Right now she's in Asheville, North Carolina. Working at a bookstore under the name Emma Cross. Why move her so often? Because she's starting to remember. Every few years, she has episodes, panic attacks, nightmares about a man with silver hair calling her Emmy. The doctors say it's trauma surfacing. So they move her before the memories become solid. Before she can go looking for answers. I felt sick. How is that legal? It's not. None of it is. But the orders come through federal channels, stamped with authority no one questions. And anyone who asks too many questions. She trailed off. Ends up dead. Like Barbara Yates. Her eyes widened. You know about Barbara? I know she tried to blow the whistle and died in a suspicious car accident. Jennifer nodded grimly. I've kept my head down because I have a daughter of my own. But seeing what they're doing to Rose, to Charlotte, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. So why reach out now? Because she's getting worse. The last placement broke down because she started having flashbacks during work. Scared customers. The handlers want to move her to a facility, a psychiatric institution where they can control her completely. She grabbed my arm. If that happens, she'll never get out. She'll spend the rest of her life medicated and silenced because she knows something she doesn't even remember knowing. I looked at the photo in my hand. At Rose's, Charlotte's, face, older but unmistakably the same girl who'd shared crackers and nightmares with me 2 decades ago. How much time do we have? The transfer order is scheduled for next week. Once she's in the facility, there's no legal way to get her out. Then we don't have time for legal. Jennifer studied me. You'd really do that? Risk everything? I already am. I pulled out my phone. I need you to send me everything you have on her current location. Address, schedule, handlers' names. Everything. If they trace it back to me. They won't. I know how to hide digital trails. She hesitated, then nodded. I'll email it to you from a secure account. But Alex, these people are dangerous. They've already killed to protect this secret. They won't hesitate to kill again. Then they'd better be ready. Because I've faced insurgents in Fallujah, and I've survived IEDs in Helmand province. Some desk warrior who thinks power makes him untouchable. I met her eyes. I'm not scared of Dennis Hammond. I'm pissed off. And that's much more dangerous. A faint smile crossed her face. Rose used to talk about you, you know. When we'd go through her old memories, trying to help her process. She said there was a girl at the orphanage who made her feel safe. Who promised never to forget her. My throat tightened. I kept that promise. I know. That's why I reached out. She glanced at her watch. I need to go. My shift starts in 30 minutes. But Alex, please be careful. And please get her out before they lock her away forever. She turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. Charlotte doesn't know who she is. They've convinced her that her memories are delusions, that her real family died years ago. If you're going to tell her the truth, you need proof. Something concrete that she can hold on to when they try to make her doubt herself again. I'll get it. Jennifer nodded and disappeared into the twilight, leaving me alone with a folder full of secrets and a photograph of a woman who'd been erased 19 years ago but refused to stay gone. I pulled out my phone and called Webb. She's alive, I said when he answered. And we have 6 days to get her back.